So, guidance on how to mitigate exposing yourself. Now, in New South Wales, I must say, there's a lot of information around in relation to mitigating exposing yourself and the people around you to asbestos. And government organisations on a national basis and state basis have been putting in a lot of effort to make people aware, but it's still quite surprising just the little knowledge that is out there with some people in the community. In relation to contractors seem to be getting very well informed by the regulator, particularly in New South Wales, Work Cover New South Wales. They're putting in a lot of effort to make people aware of the Act and Regulation 2011, and obviously national harmonisation has come into play for the contractors in New South Wales. It's not obviously across the state, across the country, but in New South Wales we have picked up that Act and Regulation, which I see as a way of moving forward. So what is asbestos? Obviously a lot of people in the room do know what asbestos is. The asbestos properties, because asbestos was such a good product in the day for construction, it was widely used everywhere. So in the past use, it's been used in various types. It's been used as a loose asbestos spray, which Mr. Fluffy scenario that Peter Ty mentioned in relation to ACT is also in New South Wales as well. So it's actually wider than was first thought, and there's been a lot of government initiatives that have taken place to find out which houses contain asbestos and to try and eradicate that asbestos from those houses. In New South Wales, there was a task force put together by Work Cover New South Wales to go out to councils in the community, offering services to allow people to go through and have sampling taken within their ceiling cavities, for example. In the ACT, which obviously I'm not representing the ACT, but they've done a great job in the ACT, and the Federal Minister that he's aware of as well has provided a lot of funding for the Mr. Fluffy scenario in the ACT, and there should be a rollout soon in relation to trying to clean up those places. So, getting to asbestos mining, I've just put this on here just to let people know that we actually did mine asbestos in Australia. It's not just from other countries such as Russia that Peter mentioned, Canada, India and those type countries, but we actually also did mine asbestos in Australia. The trading products, so these trading products are widely used, and a lot of people do reference, for example, the roof sheeting is Super 6, the wall sheeting is Hardy Flex and whatnot. It's found in many places throughout the home, which I'll go through in a moment as well. But the health effects, we're well aware of asbestosis, mesothelioma and lung cancer. And there's a lot more detail there that you'll be able to read once it does go up on the website. So what are the risks? The risks primarily are the airborne fibres. They're the risks that we're all trying to prevent people from becoming exposed to airborne fibres. And we get the question all the time, I've got some asbestos on the ground, is that going to be a problem? Well, it's not a problem unless it becomes airborne. If it's well maintained, for example, on a house building, cottage, whatever the case may be, it doesn't actually pose a risk by it actually sitting there. It's only when it's ingested or inhaled does it become a risk. I had a scenario at one school in New South Wales where there was a very much so a lack of information in relation to asbestos. The janitor at the school was running his mower over asbestos all the time, and he didn't believe it was actually a big deal because it was only small pieces of asbestos. So that's the type of misinformation that's out there that people actually believe that asbestos isn't a problem if it's small, but that's when it actually is a problem. Where's asbestos found? So commonly found in a house or in a building. It's pretty much everywhere because it was such a useful material within construction. So starting from the top, the roofing, roof insulation, guttering, your downpipes, eaves, ceilings, and it just keeps going on. Mastic, so a lot of people aren't aware that it's actually in adhesive type materials as well, and under floor tiles. In Western Australia, it's very prevalent in fencing, so it brings a whole new meaning to backyard cricket when the ball's hitting up against your asbestos fence, and it's found very commonly also within the ground, especially in New South Wales, Northern Beaches areas. A lot of people had old shanty houses and whatnot that were demolished and just left in place and just buried in the ground and whatnot. We're coming across a lot of asbestos there. Sporting grounds, they're old waste disposal facilities, so we're coming across a lot of asbestos in the ground from the sporting grounds. Believe it or not, schools, New South Wales schools, there's a lot of asbestos in the grounds. There's obviously a lot of asbestos still in situ as well. And it's sometimes found where you'd least expect it. It's actually coming up in new materials. So this aggregate that we see here for recycled material, it's very common these days for recycled building products, such as brick and concrete, to have asbestos connected to the brick and concrete. And so when you're thinking, oh, I'll go through and do some landscaping and whatnot, you could actually in fact be bringing asbestos into your property even today. So what do you do if you're going to be doing some renovating or demolishing? So the first thing you do is you check before you start. So you ask yourself some typical questions, which I find are typical, but a lot of people don't actually know, because asbestos was used so commonly up until the late 80s for building structures. Was there any asbestos used? Typically pre-1987, when it was no longer allowed to be used. That doesn't mean that people still don't use it. I know Peter's seen an example as well, where in Queensland recently some material was imported from overseas and it was actually used, some wall sheeting was actually used. Is there any plan of equipment built prior to 2004? So the cut-off date was 31st of December 2003, that we couldn't actually use it for other uses. So it really is quite recent that we still had asbestos being used. Typically they were used in military and whatnot as well, but it does raise the question, then what date should we have as a cut-off date for asbestos registers and the like within a building or structure? And I know that's something that the agency is looking at the moment as well. And from a removalist contractor's point of view, I know that when we do go into a building to do an assessment prior to commencing any demolition work or any asbestos removal, we always like to have a look at a register, and it would be great if we could look at a register and be sure that somebody has gone through, a competent person or a licensed assessor has gone through and done an investigation before we start. So it would be good if a register was present, even if the register did say that there was no asbestos present within the building. It would give us a level of comfort, and I'm sure it would give other trades a level of comfort as well, such as electricians working on electrical backing boards, plumbers having to drill through walls and floors and whatnot as well. So do not attempt to remove asbestos with people around that are not suitably involved. So obviously personal protective equipment would need to be used, using the appropriate personal protective equipment. So what's called up in the regulations at the moment is that when you're using, when you're removing friable asbestos, for example, you need a P3 respirator, non-friable P2, sometimes P1, but obviously the higher level of protection is better. So you have to make sure that people working and doing the removal works are appropriately protected. So keep children away, keep pets away and whatnot, set up exclusion zones. Where you can, you set up encapsulation as well, so you prevent cross-contamination. And use the correct removal techniques. So typically dust suppression techniques with water can be used, mist spray, PVAs, other solutions that can be used as well. On the very critical projects that have friable asbestos, for example, where there's the likelihood of material becoming airborne, we also use decontamination units. It's not to say you don't use them all the time, but obviously there's being realistic in relation to cost implications as well. Negative air units are also used that have a HEPA filter on them to then draw in any airborne fibres and filter that prior to it going out to the environment. So don't use a domestic vacuum cleaner. A lot of people think that you go and purchase a domestic vacuum cleaner that has a HEPA filter. A HEPA filter on a domestic vacuum cleaner would approximately be about this size. The HEPA vacuum on a H category HEPA vacuum cleaner is much larger, and it will obviously work for a longer period of time due to the surface area and whatnot, but a lot of people believe using just a standard HEPA vacuum or even a standard vacuum is the right thing to do. In actual fact, if you use a standard vacuum
without a HEPA filter on it, you can actually throw asbestos up into the atmosphere, and it's more readily inhalable. So you don't cut the asbestos, you don't drill the asbestos, you don't sand it, you don't scrape it, you don't scrub it, you don't water blast it, which commonly people do water blast Super 6 roofs to clean them. You don't demolish it, you don't dump it on the side of the road. So often people put them out for council pickup. Some people put them out on the side of the curb and gutter because they don't know how to dispose of asbestos, and you certainly don't place it in your domestic waste bin. So you don't do all that, but you must dispose of it correctly. So it does make it quite difficult when you look at all these techniques and whatnot that you aren't supposed to do. So this here is a common example of people putting it out with the council cleanup. Some people just aren't aware of what asbestos is, and some people just leave it on the side of the road for vehicles to travel over, and obviously that's going to become airborne. So what my recommendation is to leave it to the experts if you want to get it done appropriately, unless you want to go through and do a lot of training and somehow gain experience. But there are obviously training courses throughout Australia to undertake asbestos removal. There are various types of training courses. You've got your asbestos awareness course, which we're certainly trying to promote in New South Wales as becoming a recognised course. In the ACT they have done that. There's the non-friable asbestos, which typically takes of the old bonded style asbestos, the sheeting and whatnot. There's the friable asbestos training, and then there's also supervisor training. Obviously get experienced contractors. The more experienced they are, typically the better equipment they do have, and obviously then they typically have better trained or better experienced people. Licensing, obviously use the correct licensed contractor for the works, and typically this comes with insurance as well in relation to asbestos liability insurance, public liability. In New South Wales, for example, a minimum of workers' compensation insurance. So where can they be found? In New South Wales, the organisation that I represent, Asbestos Removal Contractors Association, we do have our website that does have a list of members on there that are licensed and do have trained employees. And also WorkCover New South Wales do have their website that do have licensed contractors listed on their website for the various types, and the search can be done via area and via category as well. So I'll leave that. Any questions to anybody? That's if we have question time. Yes.
Thank you very much, Council Australia. Question is probably better asked to Peter, but what you went through sort of applied a bit more. We want the public to do the right thing, but obviously there's drivers that can stop them from doing the right thing. The expenses associated with getting a licence, asbestos removalist, dumping it, it's expensive if you're going to do it the right way. What are we looking at to try and obviously help drive the appropriate behaviours?
That's a good question. In New South Wales, we have raised exactly those issues, and it's good that government is actually listening. The Environmental Protection Authority of New South Wales, they have been funding programs, especially to assist councils, and many councils have taken up these programs whereby they allow disposal of asbestos within their local area. They basically put a program together where the council will organise a licensed removalist to actually go around and pick up their asbestos for free. So that's something that the Environmental Protection Authority has rolled out earlier this year, and it has been very successful. So I know in Western Sydney there were 10 regional councils under the WESROC program, the Western Sydney Regional Organisation of Councils, that did undertake that program, and they're actually seeking funding to do that again. So that has been very successful. I do realise they have been doing that in other areas as well throughout New South Wales. The Environmental Protection Authority also doing a lot of other things in relation to waste tracking. I understand that Peter mentioned an app on the phone, which is where everyone's turning these days, and that's what, for licensed contractors, they're actually putting an app together so that we actually track asbestos waste. But for the local community, it is something that we certainly do encourage is correct disposal. asbestos awareness campaigns, much as you see with the leaflets outside. They have been undertaken primarily in November each year. Around 3 years ago, there was Asbestos Awareness Day. 2 years ago was Asbestos Awareness Week, and last year it was Asbestos Awareness Month. So there's a lot more media campaigns that are taking place. Betty the Bus, which is an initiative that's been put together that's driven by Insight Communications and WorkCover New South Wales, is a bus that goes around to local councils to also inform people of where asbestos is in their properties as well. So there is a lot that is being undertaken on a state level, or council level, state level and on national level to try and assist householders in all various ways: awareness, cost, disposal.